Clown virgins, clown virgins, we're getting together to make the world better. Clown virgins, clown virgins, we'll make you laugh and play, we'll take your blues away.
Clowning in and of itself is already an embodied practice. We're using our bodies, our emotions come through our bodies, we connect with our audience through contact and through our movement in space. This already has a profound effect, both the effect on us as clowns and the effect that we bring to the audience through our expressive, live human selves. And the embodied practices, besides simply the art of clowning, I use to support the process of the actor to be more effective in their practice of clowning, and also to understand and help the clown to move through the body more freely, so that we have a full expression of ourself in space, using as much of our emotions and our sensitivity and our projection, as well as our ability to listen. So that was my starting point, and I'm very curious where some of these other practitioners have found the way to bring embodied practice into their work, either as performers, directors, teachers, or some combination of those three. So here we have three absolute masters of their craft with lifelong practices to share with us. So I'm gonna speak for around 5 minutes with each of them, just to give them a chance to introduce their practice and their relationship to clown. And then I will open up to a discussion where we may ask questions to each other as panelists, and also where I'll take questions from you. If something grabs you, hear one of the speakers say something that's really exciting or confusing or curious, go ahead and put it in the chat, and I will scroll through there and try and take as many of your questions as I can in the time that we have. So without further ado, I get to introduce now Elizabeth Barron, who I met in 2004 in a clown workshop with Giovanni Fossetti. And so we met as students, and then she's sort of been my teacher ever since. Elizabeth was the creator and teacher of the voice program at the Helicos School for Creation and Theater in Florence, Italy. And I was a student in that program, and so I got to work with Elizabeth during that time doing Fitzmore's voice work and voice work in connection with Lecoq Theater. And Elizabeth has been performing and directing and teaching voice and physical theater for many, many years, and has a lot to offer this field. I don't think I ever teach a workshop without mentioning Liz at least 4,000 times.
I'll pay you later.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, Liz, the question of the hour is, what's your embodied practice, and how does it relate to, or practices, and how does it relate to clown, to your practice of clown?
This is so interesting. As you were giving the introduction, I was trying to think of the difference between, in movement theater, I'm sure the panel will reflect this, it's about a lot of release of tension, a lot about coming to neutral so then you can take on whatever. So there would be tremoring work or various other release work. And removing obstacles so you can come into contact with the audience, be present in your breath, and really be a vessel or find what's inside you. But I was like, well, what's the difference from a voice perspective? Because I imagine Ira and Naomi will speak to some of the others. But from my perspective, there is something different in clown, which is that with clown voice, there is something that is just in from my approach, or our approach, derived from Giovanni and then from from what I've developed, there's something about tension and there's something about blocks that's very important to the clown. So the same way, what is stupid about the person or what is vulnerable about the person or their difficulty, um, and what is funny or what is moving about that person is expressed in a particular vibration, where when the person taps in, that's where we find funny, and
Mhm.
that's where we find no resistance in terms of them needing to fake it or be funny. But
Right.
just as that is in the body, in
Mhm.
the contact, a lot of the work that we do in the voice work is to find the voice that's unique, the clown voice that's unique to that person, that either
Mhm.
goes with, and of course this is what's most urgent at that time, what's most true for that person, but it is or it isn't. Like it's either freeing for that person to do and exciting and kind of builds kinetic energy where they truly are able to release more emotion or able to sustain themselves, able to literally speak in a different way if they eventually speak. And
Mhm.
at first, in this approach to the work, they don't speak actually. They make sounds. And the
Mhm.
sounds are something that for that person is freeing and brings them into a fuller contact with the audience. So it's
Yeah.
vibrational.
Hmm.
So I was just
So,
thinking about that.
so what I hear you saying is that in a lot of the embodied techniques that you would use in terms of voice, in terms of tension release, tremoring,
Hmm.
etc.,
Hmm.
the goal is to remove some,
Yes,
to remove the
right.
block. But in clown, there's juice in the block.
Yes, exactly.
So you're kind of
Yeah,
more
yeah.
than getting rid of the block, you're like opening, helping to open the
Yes,
expression of the
yes,
person
yes.
exactly right there on that block.
Yeah. And helping them stay with that with it with technique, with a certain with identifying what we found, like, oh, that's this resonance, or oh, notice you're not articulating, or that's really loud. And that's really funny when you do that. Now let's sing like that. Oh my God, that's really, really funny.
So,
Yeah.
so how would you use an embodied practice with a student to help them open up more expression in their clown by staying in the block?
So one way I was realizing it's the voice work within the embodied work is best done with other people, meaning with an audience present,
Mhm.
because you can kind of technically birth a clown one-on-one with someone, like trusting yourself and from this approach beyond like a gimmick, like, oh, that's funny, but like a clown that's going to be sustainable for someone to come into contact with many different people or many different audiences. But the voice work involves, for example, from my approach, after warming up somewhat the voice, but not too much, again, because whatever is problematic for that person, or
Mhm.
whatever, if there's someone who's speaking really sexy and low all the time, there might be something high and squeaky there,
Mhm.
or there might be like with like, we don't know, but you try on lots of different vibrations, like a kid or like a bird. You're
Mhm.
trying on lots of different sounds. We even begin with imitating inanimate objects, just the person beginning to stretch and try. And sometimes you'll find that a person can't do one of them. Like they
Mhm.
can't hear it. They
Uh-huh.
might not even be able to hear it. And sometimes they'll have a total affinity for it. And as you're playing together as a group, that's notable because
Mhm.
someone will make a sound, everyone everybody will notice or laugh or be like, that's, but there's energy there. And
Uh-huh.
then they begin to play, and the more that when you they feel what was fun for them, and then you
Uh-huh.
see if that matches in front of people. So again, if
Right.
it's continually fun, and again, this is at this point all pre gibberish at this point.
Yeah.
And we don't move into voice in my approach to the work until like basically the advanced work. All
Right.
the other work is just in blacks, finding the physical form, maybe a sound. So that would be why you'd experiment with lots of different resonances, lots of different sounds, and see what's fun, like where there's a spark. And then eventually you find their rhythm, which is the most important. And from there you move on where they really have to be strict to it. And this is hard for players because
Yeah.
they're like, but I sing really well. Like, well, your clown doesn't. Um,
Like
and
the-
that trap becomes a wonderful opening for them, a really
Wonderful.
wonderful opening. Yeah.
Nice.
So
So
that's, yeah.
nice. So just to I want to just point out something that you said that I
Mm,
thought was really um, uh, possibly resonant for through the
hmm
whole conversation is that you're working with the person, experimenting with their vibration, with their movement, voice being a movement,
hmm hmm
to find the place where they get excited, they get moved, which also
hmm
resonates with the audience.
Yeah.
And so that's
Yeah.
where that's where
Yeah.
both come alive.
It's hitting it's hitting an edge either of joy
Mhm.
or of vulnerability.
Right.
Well, actually, it's all going to be vulnerable in some ways because the voice pushes whatever vibration is happening further.
Yeah.
So they're
Yeah.
vibrating more,
Yeah.
and it needs to be within the whole body. And why I know a voice is embodied from this definition or not is if they're not hurting themselves.
Right.
And that's the difference. You can do things in clown voice that you
Mhm.
could not do outside of it. Like
Right.
people can suddenly, they could belt or they could do other things. They could do other things which might hurt their voice.
Okay, so I want to hear more. I'm going to shift over to the next person. I find that feels like a really great place to start the whole conversation. Is that it sounds like you're using your technical skills to help people to stay inside the places where they're blocked, find expression in there that excites them and moves their audience, and that that's where you find. It sounds like that's where you find your tools really helpful to bring the
Yeah,
clown to life.
yeah, yeah.
So, awesome. Okay, thanks,
Yep.
Liz, and stick around, and we'll
Oh,
hear.
yeah, yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so the next amazing person I get to introduce is Naomi Silman, and Naomi Silman has trained with some of the greats. She trained at Goldsmiths and at Lecoq and at Gaulier, and then she has been working since 1997 with Lume Teatro in Brazil. And their work has made a huge impact on the world of theater. So I'm very curious to hear about now. This is my first time meeting you, Naomi, and the first time meeting your flower. Is that an earring or?
It is. It
That's
is. Yeah, and I think it's a great place to start uh, because this earring it was made for me by an indigenous, a member of an indigenous Brazilian indigenous community called the Cariri Chocó from the north of Brazil.
Mhm.
And I just think it's just beautiful, and it's connected to also what we're going to talk about in some way. So
Oh, fantastic. Well, welcome, Naomi, and welcome your earring.
it is an entity in itself.
For sure. Wonderful. Great. Well, Naomi, I'm going to kind of ask the same question that I asked to Liz, which is, what embodied practice or practices do you use to support your work in the field of clown, either as a performer or a director or a teacher? Um, yeah, I'm very curious.
Okay, thank you, Peter. And I just want to start off by thanking you and everyone for the invitation. and also that it's amazing to see so many people together with us from so many different places. And that I guess is the wonder of technology, that we can be from, you know, different time zones, different places, and we're all here together, and that's great. Uh, that kind of, I guess, leads me to, I think, one basic thing. Firstly, the basic thing about I guess the different tools I've been in contact with, which have been extremely varied, you know, from very kind of like, you know, the basis of physical theatre with Monsieur Lecoq, you know, and then, you know, the Gaulier way of understanding the play and the pleasure, you know, of the child. Uh, and then when I went to Lumi, who Lumi has been working since 1985, mixing two very apparently different ways of working, but that complement each other. So it started as a laboratory for investigating the art of the actor, of the performer, from the point of view of the physical work as practiced by Grotowski through physical exhaustion. So very extreme, rigorous training in order to go beyond our barriers, of our, in fact, more mental than physical barriers, thinking, oh, I can't, you know, oh, I can't, you know, do this anymore. So that we open, exactly as Liz was saying, through the exhaustion work or rigorous or demanding or challenging physical work, that we open what we call almost like portals to other levels and other um, layers of energy that we have inside the body, that are localized in our in the physical blocks that we have, you know. So we start work, and then we will come across a physical block that is within our much deeper muscular memory, and then when we get in touch with that, we can liberate, not liberate in the sense of getting rid of it, but in a very similar way to what Liz was saying with the voice, we can incorporate that. And this leads us to ways of using the body and the voice, which are very profound, maybe, sometimes painful, sometimes not necessarily, but are very far away from the everyday way we are used to expressing ourselves and using our bodies. Yeah. So things that come with a very big force, uh, um, you know, sometimes a lot of tension, but we work always in putting this in the body. So always it's like in the body. So it's not just an emotional release, because I think it's important for us to go back and remind, well, for me, to remind that what we're doing is in an artistic context. So it's not in a therapeutic context, right. Although of course it ends up being, you know, we're not disconnected from the people that we are, you know. So, but it's always like, and then how is this going to be used? So Lumi has that side of this particular physical training, also connected with the work done by Odin Teatret in Denmark, Eugenia Barber. There we had a lot of contact over the years with some of the performers there. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, this started in 1985. In 1988, one of the members of Lume, one of the founding members, Riccardo Puccetti, he had a huge passion for clown. It was since he was a child. And when he arrived in Lume, he said, I want to join, but I want to be a clown. And the founder of Lume at the time, Luis Ottavio Brunier, had spent 8 years in France studying. He was an assistant to Etienne Decroux. He'd studied with Lecoq. He'd studied with Gaulier. He had a kind of basis of clown, but it wasn't his thing. And but he was very open, and he said, okay, Lume is going to do clown then as well. So it became this dialogue between this very intense, almost like the sacred body, you know, of the sacred act, and the playful, stupid, ridiculous, absurd, you know, clown playing, and he worked in parallel, these two paths, one feeding the other. So I knew about Lume when I was in Golier. I met Ricardo when he was doing Golier's workshop.
Mm-hmm.
And this fascinated me, of having these two poles, which are kind of the two complementary sides if we think about the sacred and the profane.
Mm.
And I found that as a performer, this was, you couldn't have one without the other.
Wow.
And then just going back to what I was saying before about us all being here, because I think that the other element, these are technical things we're talking about, is the element of connection.
Mm-hmm.
Because what Lume was looking for at the end of the day, and what I continue to look for, is how do we connect with the other, with the other performer, with the, with the set, with the light, with the idea, with the gag, with the text, with the audience, and this connection immediately brings in the element of play. And if we can't play, we can't create the relation and the connection. So those two things, so not those, but those elements are very strong in Lume's work. And then basically everything else that we've looked at and we've studied, so physical training, voice work, working with Buto. We've had contact with 2 or 3 Buto masters from Japan. It's all looking for a similar principle, which is, I think, how you put your, not just body, it's the body, mind, and soul, or the triad, the holy trilogy. So the body, mind, and soul, your physicality, your sensorial body, your imagination, and your mind, all together in the same place, and not one dominating the other. And we live in a society for years and years that always number one, top priority is the mind,
Right.
the logical mind. And I think a lot of work that I've done since I began this long journey in Lume and before that, and also very important to mention for me, Sue Morrison. I met Sue in 1997 in France. I did the first Clown Through Mask workshop with her in 1997. And then together with Lume, we brought her to Brazil for the first time in 1999. And she's been coming ever since. And I've had a long ongoing working relation with Sue. I consider her one of my greatest teachers and inspirations. But I'm trying to not say too much, but just to finish, is that I think that then basically we are looking for how we can put these things together, mind, body, soul, and get rid of the domination of the mind. That is so such a dictator. And so looking to put these 3 parts of ourselves together so that we can enter into what we call in Lume kind of like a state of flow. A flow where you're not thinking about what you're doing, where action and impulse, there's the shortest space between impulse and action. And then you add to that the element of play. When you can be in the flow, then you can put the body, mind, and soul into play, and then you can start to go into the clown world as a possibility.
Brilliant! Wow. Okay. Well, I have a lot of questions about that.
I didn't talk about the flower yet.
No, you didn't talk about the flower yet. Well,
we're going to get to the flower as well.
Yes, wonderful. Well, we'll come back to the flower, and I'm also very curious about how Buto and physical exhaustion and these different works bring about or facilitate that connection with the mind, body, and soul in service of flow and play. So I want to come back and dig in a little bit more about that, as well as hear about the flower. So thank you for your wonderful offering, Naomi, and I will talk to you again soon. All right. So, ooh.
Sorry, Peter, just I'm aware that Tatiana's had a hand up since the beginning, so
Oh,
I just wanted to invite her, if that's all right with you.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much. Tatiana's had a, let me view.
What did you say? I have a lovely view.
No, I said I was clicking on view because I'm new to Zoom hosting. So thank you all for your
great.
If I make some mistakes like this. Hi, Titania, what's your question?
My question is, maybe you've spoken about it at the beginning. I'm kind of getting the context, but what exactly is embodied practice? I'm not sure I've heard that term explicitly so far.
Question. I bet you if you have that question, then probably a lot of other people also have that question.
I mean, I understand what people are talking about, but maybe if there's some contextualization. Thank you.
Of course, and I think I would like to, in the second part of the, once I've also had a chance to check in with Ira, I might pose that to the panel as a question, but I'll give a quick answer from me first, just to give also context to the other people, because I'm sure if you have this question, there's other people in the chat here who would also be curious about that. There's many different ways to define or describe what an embodied practice is. So the way that I think about it, I also sometimes think of mind body practices. I think about a work that I do with my physical body to change my state. And this can take many different forms. A lot of embodied practices work towards releasing tension, releasing blocks, bringing one into flow. A lot of people come to embodied practice when their block is creating pain or creating restriction in their practice. So, for example, I came to Alexander Technique partly because I had pain and injuries for many years that were getting in the way of me being able to express myself as a performer and as a human. And so I went there, but then I realized, oh, when I work on opening up more possibilities in my body and taking care of how I'm functioning on a basic level, then it has an effect also on my person and on how I'm able to express myself in the world, how I'm able to connect with people. So when I go to a martial arts class, I'm not going because I think I'm going to be attacked on the street tomorrow, although maybe, but I go also because I'm working with, how does my body respond to conflict? How can I be more grounded, be more integrated, have more breath in my life, which then translates into my work. So that's one little example. Elizabeth Barron talked about the Fitzmaurice technique, which is a technique that comes in the tradition of Wilhelm Reich, which involves tremoring, using the body's like innate capacity to release tension, especially in deep muscles that will free the breath and free the voice. So that's a couple of examples. There's many, but I've found as teacher and practitioner that some of these practices can be very effective in bringing myself or my students or the people I direct in more contact with their emotional material and expressive capacity, and also to be able to share that more in play and flow and connection. So I invited these panelists because I believe that they are also using different techniques in different ways to achieve similar ends in clown. And now we're finding out what are the ends that they find. So I hope that answered questions for a few people, and I'm gonna now move on to. Can you give a sign? Did that answer your question?
Yes, yes. And I know Alexander technique. So when you mentioned that keyword, I understood immediately. My first visit with the Alexander technique guys, that I fainted, but that's another story. So it was very powerful and exciting. Okay, thank you so much for that. Thank you.
Okay, thanks so much. All right, so now I'm going to introduce Ira. So, hello, Ira.
Hello.
Ira Seidenstein. Am I pronouncing your name correctly, Ira?
Perfect. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, wonderful. This is my first time getting to meet Ira in this virtual Zoom space. But Ira has been working with Cirque du Soleil as a teacher and performer, also Slava's Snow Show, and he's been running a mentorship program, working one-on-one with people from all over the world. Since when did you start? Since 2012?
With the mentorship, yeah, with the mentorship.
Yeah. So Ira is also a person that's had a big impact on our field of clowning and practice, and on many people as a teacher and as a mentor. So I'm very happy to have you here, Ira. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. I'm seeing my image. I look a bit tired, old, and haggard. It's midnight here in Australia, so I would still look old and tired and haggard anyways. But that's my excuse today. And I haven't quite got the light correctly. So I think that I'll approach it a little bit different than Liz and Naomi and yourself, Peter, so that we can have just crack open the our meeting with everybody today.
Great.
And before I start, I'll say hello to Hillary. I saw that you're there, so big hello and a hug to you, Hillary. Nice to see you.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello, Hillary.
Hillary and I met in I think it was 2016 in Quebec City, and there was a clown symposium, and there were about 17 teachers, and there was about 75 participants, and we all had a week together. So that's where we met. And Hillary's a fantastic clown. She did a solo show there in a bed, vertical bed. It was a fantastic clown theater. Now, you know, when I'm listening, I think that with my experience early on, I started to teach. I was asked to teach very early, and I had a real interest in teaching. So I've taught as long as I've been performing and directing. I've also been teaching, and a thing that became very clear even early on was that if I had, let's say, 15 people come to a workshop, I don't really know them, and actually I don't spend a lot of time getting to know people beforehand. Have a very short, each person introduces themselves, of course, briefly, but people are coming from very different expectations and visions about what clown is, what they want from clown, what their background is in terms of education, socially, culturally, language. So I had an interest in what is a unifying force, let's say. And I think that the things that Liz and Naomi and yourself, Peter, have already talked about also have a unifying force. But I'll approach it. I'll explain a little bit about the angle that I approach that from, and also I'll use one or two examples from my method, so that's what I'll talk about briefly right now.
Great.
And I'll also say that I have a lot of material online, so people don't have to worry about getting everything right now. And there's I think there's about 90 long blogs. Some of those blogs are 20 pages, some of them are 3 pages, and they also have some videos and things. And I have a thing that I started a number of years ago called Non-Clown Clowns.
because I started to understand that I was seeing a lot of people or scientists and performers, musicians, whatever, and they were actually, to me, really doing everything that we as teachers would like um, the people coming to study clown to do. They were already doing this.
Mhm.
And so I started a genre, I call it a non-clown clown. So I've written a few blogs and things about them and explain what that is. And I think that also that clown is in society. So it's not just in the studio. Um, coming to my method, as it were, it's called the four articulations, and that's the body, space, time, and the space-time continuum, which is what I call learning to think like a clown.
Mhm.
Okay, so that's how I move through. I start with the body, then I get into working in space and the body in space, and then I start to look at the idea of time and timing and timelessness, which is a
Mhm.
principle that I use, and then I get into the more formality of clowning, so to speak. And for me, clowning is very open field. It's open slate. I don't define what a clown is,
Mhm.
and so the method is about an approach to offering a universal way that people can explore clown. Even if we're in the same course, each person can explore it in a very different way. You know,
Yeah.
whatever's coming up for them.
Mhm.
And they can make the discoveries about that, or they may have a preconceived notion and they want to work through that in within one of my exercises. Um,
So in your
yeah.
just quick just curious, in your method, do you have particular practices that you incorporate in that method, like embodied practices, or?
Yes. So I was influenced early on. I was a very free, crazy, eccentric person from
You
certainly from the
were.
time I was 5 years old. So
Okay.
I was a free spirit,
Yeah.
and which caused, of course, a lot of problems.
Hmm.
Still does. Um, and then I started to. I wanted to teach and learn some acrobatics because for me, I was thinking about the clown that could do all the different skills,
Mhm.
dance and acrobatics and circus and mime and things like that. So I went on a bit of a journey, still going on that. And then I encountered at an acrobatics class, actually, the first acrobatics class I ever went to was for the children of circus people.
Huh.
So it was an absurd situation. So it was a master teacher, and they, kids 6 or 7 years old were doing full tumbling, and I didn't even know what was going on. And it happened to be that a yoga teacher in that city in Sarasota, Florida, she came to the class and she asked the teacher if she could take photos of some of the students because she wanted to teach yoga in the schools. So he took me and another adult, a buddy of mine. He said, "Take them because we were just bums." So he didn't have to interfere with the kids teaching. So we went over, and my friend, he had gone to a theater training and everything, so he knew what yoga was and all this. And but it turned out that whatever she wanted to do, I could do.
Hmm.
I could do all these things. I didn't know I could do them. I could do splits, and I could do headstand, I could do shoulder stand, and I could do it quite well. And so she photographed us, and that's what she used to promote her thing. So that was my introduction to yoga. And I didn't know what yoga was. And then so I'm just pointing out that yoga was became a very big influence. Now, yoga can mean a lot of things. Usually, people think about either some very esoteric spiritual concept, or they think of a very physical thing. And of course, yoga is a combination of those two and much more. Um, but what was interesting when I started to really study it, I became a younger yoga teacher. You know, I didn't teach it except for the standing postures. I didn't have a use for the rest of it. So I did an intense training, but I was very interested in the two halves of the body. And I had been doing my own research. And so in ballet, for example, you have the port-à-bras. So when you're doing the demi-plie, you're also doing something with your arms, even if you're just holding them, but they're active. So I started to see, and then in martial arts, you know, it looks like Tai Chi is up here, but actually it's down in the heel, in the Achilles, and in the pelvis. So I started to see these universal principles, as I call them. So first thing is the top half and the bottom half of the body for me are crucial to embodied practice for a performer. Now we know that there's 100, if not 1,000 different types of embodied practices. Okay. But I'm talking now about clowning and about performing and to a certain degree also well-being, health, you know. So the two halves of the body are very essential to my work.
So you use that principle in your clown practice and in your clown teaching, is understanding the relationship between the two halves of the body?
Yes. And I use it. What's also interesting, I have when I was 24 and I was going to the Del Arte school, that's when Carlo was the main teacher. The founder was actually the main teacher every day. So that was a unique period of his teaching, in fact. So I was starting to do I would show up early in the morning and do my own practice. 7 a.m. I'd get there and I'd work for about an hour and a half or 2 hours. And then I'd go home and eat something quick. And then I'd come back to the school. But I was doing this research. And from the beginning, I started to create a method of movement, which is 10 movements that everybody would recognize. The first one's just rolling down and rolling up, rolling back, straightening out, and the flat back. That's movement number one. And then I do it. Then I add a second version of that, which is to use the arms. Okay, so from the beginning, it's like a clown exercise or an acting exercise. It's a full body exercise, and that's how I approach it. Okay, so there's those 10 physical movements that everybody would recognize, and that takes 10 minutes once you know the routine. But that's not creative. That's just movement, and that's awareness. So the physical I use as a preparation for discovery, preparation for creativity, preparation for creation. Okay, so that's a little bit of introduction to how I'm thinking. And I'll say that, for example, I have this exercise called do I have another minute or two?
I think, Ira, we should open it up now, because I've been with you for a while. I want
Can
to
I
make
finish with this with one exercise?
Okay.
So that's called the nothing exercise. And a normal actor or a clown or a professional or a teacher or a director would look at it at the beginning and they would go, Ira, what are you getting them to do that looks like nothing? So I nobody said that, but I called the exercise the nothing exercise because I know how we think sometimes. And my point is that the exercise has everything. So you have a very simple structure. You walk forward, you move your arms 3 times, and you pause. And then after a few seconds pause, you move your whole body at once. And that triggers your feeling. And you work with your body and your feeling, not your emotion necessarily, your feeling, the energetic feeling, or whatever you want to call it, the embodied feeling, and you work with that right away. So that's the nothing exercise. That's one of the simplest exercises I have, and it's amazing. And
Wonderful.
And even a cynical person, and I have people do it 3 times in a row. A cynical person would do that, and after the 3rd time, they would get a big fat, oh,
Great.
really?
Well,
Okay.
that's wonderful. Thank you, Ira, and that's a great place to end there. This little introduction from you, the idea of a simple exercise that triggers the whole pattern, that triggers something profound in the person, which I think is also, when I think about what Liz was saying in terms of moving into the block, and also what Naomi Silman was saying about the physical exhaustion, bringing out different kinds of emotion by tapping layers. Seems like a few of you are using practices that will activate the sentimental body, the feeling body, the emotional body of the performer to move towards the clown. Let's see. Now we're gonna ask a question. I think I want to open it up to all three of you to answer. And so the question, my first question that comes up after hearing all of you speak is to do with exactly that. What do we mean by a block? I'm taking it from Liz. So you, Ira and Naomi, you didn't use the term block. I'm bringing that in from what I heard from Liz, but I wonder if that's a term that relates to you, or if you have another term for that. Like Naomi, when you were speaking, you were talking about how physical exhaustion would bring you into connection with these portals or these other layers of tension, etc. Do you find that, I guess I'm asking you, do you find that that your physical practice, that you do physical work either with yourself or with the people you're teaching or directing, that help them get into touch with those spots towards clown? And how does that look like? Yeah, for you, Naomi. Unmute yourself.
Unmute yourself,
Mute
woman.
yourself.
Yeah, that's a profound exercise. How do we unmute ourselves? Yes, I think that it's very much to do with awareness. I mean, if we think that the basic state of the clown is being, for me, the clown, what is the clown? It's the absolute hyper state of being totally present and playing with the present moment, with all the possibilities we have. And for that, we have to be extremely aware. So obviously, we have to be able to use everything, our physical body, as Ira said, the feeling. Thank you for giving me that word, because since I live in Portuguese most of my life, we use sensação, sensation, but I think feeling is a good word. And so for that, the physical part, I think, helps us to become more aware. I mean, I like this. One time I saw someone, I can't remember, gave this simple exercise. How do we become present? So, for example, if you stand and somebody does something and you clap, very like, you become present because you're engaging your physical body and you're feeling and you're reacting to something. So very simple things. When we laugh, if we laugh, really laugh, we are activating the physical muscles, but it's the feeling as well, and we are in relation to something. So for me, it's exercises that we are trying to get to these states that then become organic, and we can play with them. So just how you asked how. So basic things for me, I have some important also focus points. One is the feet. It was very important that Ira mentioned the two parts of the body. And in general, in Western culture, from basically more or less here down, we are very cut off. And I think that is one of the main reasons why so many of us look to embodied practices, because the Eastern practices, and for example, here in Brazil, when we go and we have contact with either the African culture and African religions or with the indigenous culture and practices of Brazil, they have a completely different relation to the body, which is whole, and they are in touch with the waist down, and they are in touch with practices that how do we do this, say this in English, that connect them to the ground, that connect them to. So for me, a lot of the actual exercises is working, firstly, the feet. If we think that the feet is the interface between the earth and our being, so this sensitivity, yeah, it's literally an interface, and through the feet we can create, we can get an energy from below that can come up through our body, and this can bring us much greater awareness. And then a lot of other work which is from the center down. So how to create a strong center. So lots, always working with the knees bent, and then the base, which is again, you know, from here downwards. How we are so, this is crazy for me, no, the thing, especially for women, you know, don't open your legs, cross your legs, you know, everything, you have to be in the, like, you know, in the right way. We mustn't, you know, this whole area is, and funnily enough, since I'm British in origin, English, when I arrived in Brazil and I started doing the very rigorous training in Lumi, the first 6 months, all I heard was, and in England, people don't have hips. And in England, people, they've never moved their hips before. With the arms are fantastic, great arms, you know. And this was very a mirror for me to see that how this is, you know, we're not supposed to, you know, activate from the waist down, basically. So that's why I think we use a lot of these Eastern practices, and even, I mean, yoga or any other kind of martial art and other principles that put us in touch with the body as a whole. So that's very much part of what I use technically.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant, and that does seem to relate very well as well to Iris 10 movements in terms of getting people in touch with the whole body. And I love. And
sorry, just to finish, because I said about the base, but there are other small, tiny places that we don't think about. For example, top of the head, because the energy comes up and it kind of gets stuck here. So top of the head, back of the neck, forearm. Only 2 years ago, someone said to me, I was rehearsing, and someone said, "Oh, your left forearm. It's kind of, you know, what's happening with your," and I was like, my God. And so it's tiny places like that that sometimes we just we've never given space to.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I've found, I was teaching for many years in a circus school in Berlin called the Etage, and I found even the circus artists who work with their bodies all day long, they're often disconnected from the sensation, from the feeling. And so I ended up bringing in a lot of tools to get them to just feel what's there. And I think.
And the face as well. For example, people from dance, they won't use the face. And it's like, you know, the face is your body as well. This is very much also, I feel, from Buto was something that helped a lot to understand how we can dance with the face, you know, with the face, with the hands, with the feet, soul.
Whole. Be whole. Wonderful. Liz, would you like to say something on that?
I'm just trying to think of what would be of adding to what both Ira and Naomi have said, because it really is interesting how much we're all in pursuit of the same thing, using different methods, but in terms of flow and in terms of state, in terms of presence, in terms of availability that Ira was talking about. I think one might be an answer to what Tatiana was saying. I was realizing that something about embodied clown
Mhm.
is that there's a larger body, which is the context of the person in relationship with the audience or within the community of other clowns. That there's something about what techniques can we use
Mm.
to bring that body into the body that's present.
Yeah.
And I just thought of this because I have performers who make wonderful work and we can't videotape it right. Like it doesn't, and why is that? Why does it not translate? And part of that is because there is this magical, probably hormonal release. I don't know what it means, but in true, and I love that Iris said, I'm not going to define what clown is or that it, like, I want to be respectful of that. In my definition of what is happening for a person to be present within this body, there is something that happens, a connection that happens between this person's body and energy, and that. And energy is can be very woo-woo to say, but it also can be what is activating more of this person than in what has gotten shut down or what has been repressed. And it can be very simple what it means for that person to come into pleasure, or what it means for that person to come into, oh, I see there's an accent. What I specifically mean is not clown for the camera. I mean a clown performance that is recorded. And they're different things. It doesn't mean it can't be funny. There can't be great rhythmic stuff. There can't be great syncopation, a great gag, great plot, etc. I'm just talking about the magic that happens that I'm sure people present in the conference have experienced. And for me, that comes from the greater body. And the connection of that. And another thing I wanted to say is Giovanni, my teacher, Giovanni Fusetti, a main teacher amongst the main one, he is working with these same energy centers and principles of activation for the person, what activates them. And he uses a Reichian approach, which would mean identifying where in the body there's the most coming and the person moving into that. And there's always pleasure. So it like moving from even sensation. And that is when working with dancers or mimes, etc. Pleasure has been removed from the process of being in front of people. And a child, if there hasn't been enough, if there hasn't been too much pain upon or criticism upon having been seen, a child will automatically grow when witnessed by the village, will automatically grow when feeling supported by the audience. And that's pleasurable. And it might be that a person, because of what they've been through, transgresses, and that brings pleasure. It might be they're beautiful and it brings pleasure. But pleasure is something removed often from, quote, Western culture, and you're not supposed to be seen in pleasure, whatever it may be. And that is part, for me, of the embodiment, being in a larger body in a state of pleasure. And of course, that becomes then challenging if you're going to create a piece and you're going to stay in that state, you're recreating it like that. Those are the challenges in advanced work. But that pleasure, that thing only happening now is for me what actually, going back to the other point, is harder to capture. But I think you might see it if they're truly in pleasure.
Nice. That pleasure principle reminds me of, Naomi, your exercise of having the person clap or laugh to bring them into presence. Both of those actions tend to be ones that activate pleasure. And of course, I know also, Liz, from working with you and from working a lot with Giovanni Fusetti, that when you're speaking about pleasure, if I understand correctly, you also could mean pleasure in sadness, pleasure in rage, pleasure in pain.
Oh yeah, flow.
Well, the flow of the
pleasure of getting angry.
Pleasure of getting angry, sure, and the pleasure of sharing that flow with the larger body, with the
And to put a finer point on that, what Naomi was saying and what Ira was saying about movements in the body, that's where people can get surprised, right? Even preceding the emotion or the flow might be simply movements can bring pleasure, vibration can bring pleasure, and we don't know the why, and we don't need to say why. It's
Mm,
just how it's happening. It just
mm.
happened.
Yeah. So I'm curious to bounce back to you, Ira. You were talking about this very simple exercise that triggers something in people when they do it. That in your experience, you use this frame that consistently brings out a kind of expression in the person that is strong for them and strong from the audience. Could you say something about that?
Yeah. Um, you start from stillness, and that's important. So after you've walked forward, you pause, and your arms are active. They're in front of you, but you're still. You have a pause, and you're just with yourself. And then you make one movement using the whole body, however you want to move. But I often say, make sure you use your knees and your arms, because sometimes people will make a movement up here, but they don't do anything with the lower part of their body. So that's only an instruction to assist people. So they make a movement with their whole body, but that movement is not frozen. That movement. So if I'm here right now, I'm pausing and I go like that. I don't know what I'm going to do at that moment, but I'm thinking. So whatever movement I make, it triggers a feeling, and you work with that feeling. So when I say you make a movement, it's specific to trigger a feeling, whatever arises, and then the actor, the artist, is to in their own way to explore that or express that or create with that or move with that. So that's that. I want to say something though, taking off from Liz talking about the clown and the bigger body of it. And often it's easier for me to explain something with an anecdote. So you have to forgive me, I hope. But when I was 48, I did my master's degree in visual and performing arts. And what I was exploring, I was not doing it for academic reasons. I was doing it actually because I had something I wanted to write about and think about. And I really like Stanislavski, and he's very important to everything we're doing and talking about right now. He was already doing, but we've cut off from that. So he had all. It was very physical what they were doing, and it was very spiritual. He had a kind of assistant who was a little bit like a guru. So they were very far out. They were very cosmic, and he at the end of his life he had two conclusions, and one was that the most important thing in the theater is what he called prana. That's a Sanskrit word, but he meant that as the energy communication between the performer and the audience and the performer. He said that is the most important thing in acting and theater. And that's what Liz was just explaining about in relation to clowning. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about clowning here and embodiment. So I wanted to see if there was a possible scientific way to find out what that energy was. And I'm not a scientist, so there's a limit to how far I was going to go, and it was only a master's degree. So, but the title of the thesis is interesting. That's what I'm getting to. It's called "The Body of the Actor in the Space of the Theater." So part of embodiment is to enliven the space, and that's the communication with the audience and receiving their communication with you. And that's what in a way that's the essence of clowning. Clowning is not just for yourself. You use yourself so that you can communicate about our human nature or about our world, whatever you want to go with it. Okay, so I don't know if that. Yeah, I'll finish that.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Wonderful. It seems like I think the thing I'm curious. I really like, Ira, that you spoke about something specific. Also, how simple it is, starting from stillness, and then doing one gesture, one action with the whole body, and then using that as the door. And I wonder, Liz or Naomi, if you have a specific practice that you might use to help, or maybe I'll ask Naomi, since we just heard from Liz, like you were talking about sensitizing the body and finding different things in the body. Is there a particular practice or exercise, something specific that you use to open up this flow? I mean, I'm sure there is, but what were the terms you were using? Flow and play, to rid the domination of the mind. Is this something that you would use and rather than say like, okay, we just throw the clown on stage and we see what happens, which a lot of theater practitioners have had good success with this too, of just put them in the situation and see how they figure it out. But I'm asking more about like specific approaches that activate the body, that help to bring this flow and connection.
Yes, I can share one. And interesting, because you mentioned in the beginning this, in my bio, that this connection that we've had over the years with the Bhutto practices. Mm-hmm. And something that I like to do very much, I guess because I've been traveling with through many different schools and practices and ways of thinking about this, which is incredible how it's all connected. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so, but it's also, I think, part of our work to, when we go to a source, and then funnily enough, I feel like when we study with a source, we practice something, we receive some wisdom, mm-hmm. and then we have to embody it. And we have to make it our own.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we're just repeating something. And I love this idea of the tradition, how it passes from one to another, but it passes not as something sacred, like, and now you do this and follow like a formula, but it's recreation all the time. It's how it came through me, through my experience. So there was an exercise I learned with a Bhutto practitioner called Yumiko Yoshioka. She's a Japanese Bhutto performer who lives in Germany, and her image is very simple, that the body is like a huge bag of water, like one giant bag of water, and we basically stand with the feet parallel, and we just move with moving as if we have this bag of water that is being pulled up and dropped down. So we move first up and down, and then the bag of water is right and left, and then the bag of water is front and back. So we are awakening the body, but with an image. It has a weight, it has a sensation, and we do this repeatedly for a while. So up, down, front, back, left, right. And this is her exercise. And then she uses that in her own way. When I practiced this exercise, I found it amazing how it created a sensation of my body felt so engaged and so alive, and I started to feel this energy under my arms, as if my arms could raise themselves through the creation of this energy. I thought, oh, that's interesting. And then I started to explore with my students. So we would do this exercise, and then you start to feel this movement, that your body is being moved alone through this vibration. And then I thought, for the clown, what is missing is the connection. So then I had people do this looking at each other. So you have to look with a partner the whole time. And the one rule is that you cannot stop looking. You cannot break the connection. So you're aware of yourself, and then it became this kind of flow where you expand, you grow with this energy that creates in the body, and then you release by breathing out. Because the other thing for the clown that I found is the most important was not the the inhaling, it's the exhaling. Because if you don't release all the air, you always have the stagnant energy and you're never truly open. That you cannot, there's no space for something to come. So it's just this, they have to, so we expand with this sensation coming from this exercise I described, and then you exhale all the air, but you have to keep, and what happens mostly when we exhale, we do this, and we look down automatically. And the only thing is that you're not allowed to do that. And through keeping the connection, very strange and interesting things started to happen. Sometimes people would start laughing, or they do and they would mirror the movements one with the other. And little by little, I would just let people continue, sometimes over like 15, 20 minutes. And they just get into this flow of play between themselves and the body. And then, funnily enough, the next stage would be the space. So they would have to do this same relation in play, but using the space. The door, the window, the chair, the wall, I often put music as well that helps them. And very often comes even almost like a scene, you know, even some kind of play. And then sometimes we would take that and have them do it and people watching, and then look the audience. So you can take it further and further.
Amazing. Wow. Thank you. That's really interesting. And yeah, I've just one second. Just to say, I've enjoyed a lot working with physical activation with contact, and that sounds really like a very powerful way to do it in duos like this, and then connect it out to the space. Awesome, thank you. Ira, you have a question?
Yeah, I'm just seeing, is it correct we only have 15 minutes left?
Yes, we have 15 minutes left, that's right.
So do you want to ask if any of the people sharing with us today have any questions? Is that, or are the four of us going to continue?
I was curious to hear if Liz wanted to also share one practice, because we had one from each of you. Liz, do you have something in particular that?
I think it's okay. I think I mean I do, but I think I'd be interested in hearing from the people
from the people.
attending more. But happy to return to that.
Okay. So then if someone who's tuned in here has a question for one of these brilliant people, or myself, or to the panel in general, please give us a wave. And maybe you've put it in the chat, but I think there's a lot in the chat. So if you want to stick your hand up.
If not, Peter. I want to say something about the block, because originally about 20 minutes ago, that was the question about blocks. And I said that normally, if I see that a person has a problem, I usually ask them, "Are you okay?" or "What's happening for you?" I usually I don't call it a block. Not that we can't use that word. It's not a nasty word. But I often ask them, and I get in not a dialogue, but I ask them so I can hear and so I can understand, and if I can assist them in some way. The other thing is, when a person does an exercise and they have a obvious hard time, and I'll just say, sometimes I say thank you. That's my way of saying, okay, you can stop for a moment. And I ask them, did you suffer for your art? And that usually, gets a bit of a laugh, and they just, sometimes all they can do is go like that. And I think that the value of being of a block is recognizing that I'm blocked, or recognizing that I'm stuck. And we as teachers will assist people to work through that. And I think that sometimes it's valuable to understand that in the person's up there learning. And so things are going to come up that they are either not familiar with, or they don't know exactly how to handle it. And I think that's a positive. Yeah. And if they notice it, it's a positive. If they don't notice it, that's a problem.
Yeah.
Okay.
Nice. Liz, you have something to you.
Oh, are there any questions?
I don't see
I
questions yet, or no waves.
wait,
Here
I
we
think
go.
yeah.
We have
There are some things in the chat. I think some questions.
no, let's see.
Oh, I want to answer one of them.
You want okay, go for it. You want to read the question, Liz?
Actually, I want to answer all of them, but other
Okay.
people.
I think
When embodies become a practice, is it a way of saying we are otherwise disembodied? So I'd give a first proposal in answering that, which is Naomi talked about the breath. Disembodied, well, obviously we're walking around in a body. Our parasympathetic is at least functioning because we're breathing. But yes, I would even go as far as to say often people are disassociated, like approaching that state. We're especially now in contemporary life, there's so capitalism feeds on trigger, feeds on scaring us, exciting us, dopamine fixes, et cetera, et cetera. And we are often, if on a computer, under breathing, and more and more and more, we're not in contact. And if I haven't been empowered with how long it's okay for me to stay in eye contact, or if I never make it, or if I've been hurt in eye contact, then I don't have the ability to even come in a comfortable way into eye contact. And all of that will feed into an organism that is depressed and that might even be so triggered that I don't know what I'm feeling. And so a lot of our work is to bring you into your body to encounter what feelings they are. Some people are in pain. They're so busy blocking the pain that they can't, that if I were to open up to my feelings, I might be in pain. And maybe for a while, part of my contact will be me being allowed to feel sorry for myself in front of you. And then if we eventually push it, this person can work through something about the fact that they were never allowed to just to whine, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But yes, I would say in a way we need to apply effort to tend to our embodiment. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a profound.
As supported as we can be, because these practices need support. Yeah. But I would say, like, we need to be supported in these practices. They are not things to do. Maybe we can do them alone, but as much as we can be supported, because we're hitting edges. We're coming into contact in ways that we are being encouraged to never come into contact. So I'll answer that one, and then maybe other people can answer other questions.
Naomi or Ira, do you want to field another one of the questions there? Thank you, Liz.
Sure.
Naomi, or
go. You want to go ahead, Ira?
Is there another question?
There's a question. Yeah.
Elena has one, and Carmen has one in the chat. Peter, do you want to maybe read one of them aloud?
What does connecting to the space look like for each of you? But we only have 9 minutes left, and I'd like to have the last few minutes to wrap up at the very end. So maybe either, unless we go short, Ira or Naomi, you want to field that question?
Okay. The connection with the space, I use the anecdote. I have an exercise called the 6 directions, and that's to help us to learn that in normal stagecraft, in classical acting, you never do anything that doesn't have a meaning. So you would not turn to your right if there wasn't a purpose. Mm-hmm. Or if you turn to your right, there's something that is delivered to that actor. So the use of direction in the space is very important. So in a sense, that's one answer to what does it look like. It looks like you know what you're doing. It looks like the reason you're walking is that you have a purpose. And sometimes actors, even in an improv situation or in a studio situation, or even in performance, they're not actually conscious of how they're moving in space. All professionals, we think we are, but I would say that it's not necessarily, it ain't necessarily so, like the song goes.
Okay.
Okay.
Brilliant. And Naomi, you want to throw one in there?
Oh, I was gonna. I thought I might answer the other question from.
Oh, sure. Okay.
But does,
Which the other one was
often when working with the body, when tension is identified in my body from a teacher, I get even more in my head about that. Is there a way you practice with your students to work through that type of block? A few things I was thinking about this, and by the way, it's just amazing. This is making me reflect on so many things, and this already in itself is super valuable. I think firstly, one of the practices that I realized after a certain time, and when I went to work with Lume, how important it was to have a moment where everyone is working together and we're not watching each other from the beginning. So we're not straight away in this position of, I'm there alone, trying so hard to kind of like get it right because, we're trying. But so we work a lot with being everyone in the space together, doing all these practices and physical work, etc. So each one is in the same boat, and then I try and see what people are struggling with, and I might go and say something, or, try working more, or focus more on your feet, or focus on your spine, let the feeling come, so there's a kind of preparation time where we're all doing it together and nobody is watching or judging. We can do a lot of work in that moment that is not so, where we're not so vulnerable or so exposed. And also, the other thing that I learned through my work with Lumi, which shocked me, and at the same time was a revelation, is that when I went to train with Lumi, everything was through positive reinforcement. So always, that's it, that's great, yeah, do that more. I really like that. That's it, that's perfect. Keep going, and not. No, it's not like that. It's not, which, sorry to say, guys, for me, the European school, it's too, the via negativa, I'm generalizing, but there is a lot of that around.
I want to feed off of this. This has been a large part of my pedagogy, a massive part of it. So there's you can be like that. Yes, we know that. How about here? Keep going here. And rather than the no, in which shut me down to an insane degree. Like I would love to redo so much of my education, also because I can't learn from that space. Some people do learn from that space, so I need to incorporate it, but yes. And I want to take what you were saying to feed back to the block, the question about the block. In all the work that I do, regardless of whether or not it's clown, you can't get rid of something or ask it to go away without getting to know it and playing from it. So a main way to work with a block would be, rather than trying to calm it in the body, would be to play it. Absolutely play it. Say yes to it. Say yes to it. And assume that power is there for that person right in there. By power, I mean them being able to celebrate themselves or to eventually come to neutrality or simplicity and availability. But they can't if we get in this like, don't do that thing happening to me. And that will oppress me in that way. So that's one way to work with a block. And another is, if there's something that keeps coming up that's a habit, or it's a parasitic habit, it's not helping to empower the person, it would be to make sure there's something else to do. There is something else to focus on. Hence why Ira was talking about very specific exercises to try to do. But there's some form to invest your energy in, rather than saying, don't do that.
Yeah.
So that would, yeah.
Can I make a quick comment?
Yeah. We have 3 minutes. So
the nothing exercises, for example, that I mentioned, it's very simple. The instructions are very simple, and but there's no aesthetic. There's a few instructions to help the person start. Once they make that movement, that first movement is nothing to do with me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the observer. I'm just sitting there. I don't know what they're going to do. I don't know what they're exploring. And they do whatever they want or feel like or whatever they want to try. So there's a small instruction to help the person stabilize, and then they're off and running.
Mm-hmm.
And in that process, certain things might come up, as we know as teachers. That's okay. But there's no aesthetic.
Nice. Yeah, that seems like that would also remove a lot of the no's.
Yes.
If they're not trying to succeed in a particular form, to
Yes.
fulfill a particular aesthetic, then they have freedom to say yes to the thing that's there.
And the last ingredient, having to complement, is that when I feel that people are in a difficulty, it depends. I think there's so many different ways, but one of them is also to try to create some kind of instruction or image that brings them back into pleasure. So something silly, some silly image or something absurd. I kind of like to try and break the atmosphere, that if it's getting hard, so you bring some kind of lightness or something that people can play with as well, and that helps to, anyway, it's so specific to the moment. I think basically we as people that guide other people, we have to be so aware and open and listen to what's happening, and not impose. We are creating and exchanging with each person as it happens, in the life.
Amazing. Wow.
I think
beautiful.
I usually give very explicit instructions, but there's always an open end. So there's a place for the person to interpret that. So the instructions are so simple. And then the other thing is it's got to do with their magic or their issues or whatever comes up. That's good. Whatever it is that comes up. And then how you work with that, that's your artistry, or that's learning about clowning, or that's learning about your humor, or that's learning about expressing a feeling. That's a huge unknown for the teacher. The teacher doesn't know what's going to happen to the person when they do an exercise. So the teacher has to be in the like quantum physics, the observer state that doesn't know what's going to happen. And sometimes, okay, there can be a time where you're looking for specific results. That's very different.
Yeah. Beautiful.
There ain't no place I'd rather be. You're lighter than the sun and the stars to me. Everybody's family at the Clown Virgin.